Hello and welcome to Inspiring Stories Podcast. I am Karen Light of Studio Light Illustration, where we transform visions to visuals on our quest to help create a more human world through the magic of storytelling. You can find out more at KarenLight.com for now, and soon we will be launching StudioLightIllustration.com. I also want to take a moment to give a shout out to our friends and sponsors at Fig Factor Media. Fig Factor Media is an international publishing company with heart, specializing in self-development, anthologies, business, and children's book that bring messages of hope, inspiration, and encouragement into the world. Find out more at figfactormedia.com. All links from this podcast will be in the description below. I'm excited to be here today with Esperanza Smith, the amazing woman behind Pure Esperanza at pureesperanza.com. Pure Esperanza and Esperanza herself is about empowering consciousness and transforming our world through soul inspirations and the art of living. Today, she's here to talk about her book, Girl Seeking Pearls. Hi, Esperanza. How are you?
Hi, fine. Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. So let's dive in. Tell me, what is this story about to you?
Well, Girl Seeking Pearls is a story of inspiration. I had began it a long time ago, probably before I had children, and I was writing along thinking about things that were inspirational to me at the time and kind of pieces of life and trying to present them in a story kind of way for people. Life happened, and a whole bunch of life took place with having children, raising a family, and entering my vocation and all those kinds of things. And I set the manuscript away for many, many years, decades. And then through a series of different life events, and some of them were very challenging, it brought me to bringing the manuscript out again and writing about it. And by then I realized that there was a whole story of life inside of that manuscript, which was now no longer what I thought it was and had transformed into something completely different. So then it was really about working in the pieces of different events and experiences that stood out for me over the course of life. And it's written in third person in a storytelling kind of way because it's a part of me, but it's not the totality of me. And it's really almost a place where I feel a transformation within myself took place. And in that is the hope of inspiration for other people too.
Yeah. So tell me about the significance of the pearls.
Say that again.
The significance of pearls.
Yeah.
Why did you choose that title?
I have to be very honest with you. I had a dream, and the title came to me. And to me, the significance of that, I love all kinds of rocks and crystals and things like that, mineralogy in general. And pearls is a symbol of like the purity of like the essence. So when I think about that within us as a human being in the divine spirit or the presence of like what some say I am, that totality of consciousness, that essence, the core, that's the pearl.
I love it. Can I share with you what I was really excited about with pearls?
Yeah. What
it brought up for me was just having to do a deep dive, like going deep down into the ocean of life, right? And like there's this little like pearl, like this little morsel that's hidden for you when you're willing to go down there and discover your treasures.
Beautiful.
So I love that title. Yeah, I love the title.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about what inspired you to really put this story out there?
Yeah. Well, I would have to say that it's been like a lifelong, like that seed that sits inside of us of like what we want to do in life, and some of us know it and then we don't hear it right away, or we don't listen to it right away, or we go through a series of lots of different experiences to recover that seed that was with us from the start somewhere along the way. We usually can trace it back even into childhood sometimes. And that piece, I think for me, is about trying to live into a deeper wisdom within myself and bring that forward as a messenger. Really just sharing that And, you know, I see it as coming in the form of inspiration in so many pieces of just everyday life. And the totality of that, I think, is really what is was my inspiration for trying to bring that forth. Because I think the views are a little unique. We all have them as unique, but I think when we listen to the diversity of what is unique in all of us as human beings, we find reflections of ourselves, and we are also empowered then to speak our own truths and to bring that into existence. And I feel like that's kind of what the soul is trying to do, is trying to express itself in this form out here. And we can all partake and impart that wisdom and that joy. And I also feel, you know, obviously all of those are qualities of love.
Mm-hmm. And it's like for me, when I was reading it with the image of the pearl too, it almost gave it, we talk about our inner wisdom, our inspiration, our truth, and they're all like gorgeous things, but they're very abstract almost and kind of intangible. And it's like you found a way of making this tangible thing. It's like, oh, this is something I can hold in my hand. You know, this is something that here, like, you know, it's, I don't know, I really like that about it. For me, that really was powerful to think
I'm
of it.
so thankful. I'm really so thankful for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's the kind of thing, as you know, being an artist, that when that happens, it's really just a wonder, because it's not something that I could have like strategically or calculated in my mind. When it happened, even when I kind of took that first manuscript and tossed it and kind of started all again, it just kind of flowed out. And it was like, it just needed for me to let it be, whatever it was, you know. And as you know, when you're in that flow of it, you know, I'm sure, you know, it's been talked about in so many ways. People say it's the zone, people, you know, the flow, you know, but it just moves through you in that way. And that's a beautiful thing, because it connects, you know. I think that is what connects us all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I feel that. So what would you say the biggest challenge was for you in birthing this book and bringing it to life?
Yeah, I would say that for me, it's always about working with the egoic mind. So that's a broad umbrella, and it holds things like our fears, our doubts, the self-talk that goes on in our mind, you know, that's critical. And I would say being sure that the challenges and struggles mentioned in the book and that were experienced, that pain at the time, were at a place that was healed enough to be able to present it from a truth of what the wisdom of that was, as opposed to being in an emotional state about it still, and then perhaps speaking out of emotion and not out of something that was really true. So sometimes that takes time and stepping back. And in all of that, it's a matter of stilling the egoic mind. And that's what I mean by working with the egoic mind. Being able to like silence
it. What are like some signs that you've recognized that help you know when you're ready to speak from truth versus emotion?
Yeah. Well, I would say that there's a pocket in each of us that when we settle into it, we feel very grounded and we're centered, so that we don't feel swayed and moved by the thought of it at that moment. So when I speak about things in the story, there were things that for periods of time would cause me to have like jags of crying. You know, something that really felt like, you know, even to the point like from that extreme to like flinching, you know, inwardly flinching, even if I wasn't doing it on the outside, you know, but inwardly still like almost like a wince, like, ooh, ouch, that still hurts, you know. And so it was really about letting it sit, kind of like like with something that's simmering, like just letting it sit, being with it, kind of being like that ideal parent for the child that goes like, here, I'll soothe you, I'll comfort you, I'll be here for you, and just being able to come from a place of non-judgment on my own self, and being able to go past those kinds of fears that allowed me to be like, it really doesn't matter what others may or may not think. It's really a matter of just like, this is the story. This is my story. And everybody has one. And in that, there is worth, value, and because we're here, we exist, and we have these experiences. And I feel so blessed that I can share those things, and that in the time of even Girls Seeking Pearls, which I think has been one of the most rewarding things, is just being able to have others come back and say, wow, that part really touched me, or they reflect on something and that was a different way of seeing it, or it's helping me through this time. They might be referring to something they're going through at that moment. And just having the ability to inspire. And again, I feel that really comes from that deeper part that is in us that connects. And I think that we're all here to do that in different ways. And I mean, there's so many forms. That's what's really wonderful about it.
Yeah. So you touched on something that I think is a common struggle for people, which is a lot of people have stories that they want to share in different ways. But it's hard for them to come out of that self-judgment or that fear of being judged on the outer, and really feel like what they have to share is of worth and of value to people. Any advice or thoughts you could offer folks who might be teetering on the edge, just wanting to jump into it,
Well, I would say, like, my heart just is so full and in holding the idea of like each and every individual with such a powerful story, and that each of the stories that we carry are pieces of the whole total story, like the collective conscious soul story, and we're all parts of that beautiful tapestry that is unfolding in the evolution of humanity. So that I feel that if we can, all of us have seen murals or tapestries that are just full and rich, and if we can imagine that we're all playing into those parts, and without each of us, it's not the same. It's not whole. We are all part of that whole. So, there isn't one nuance of color or line or form that doesn't exist without its purpose. And my deepest wish for everyone is that they can feel that, in themselves. And sometimes to find that, it's those reminders that we get all around us, perhaps like Girls Seeking Pearls might be, or it is when someone hears a piece of music or listens to a poem or hears something inspirational out there in the world, or just stops to see a flower, whatever that is. But that moment that the heart is touched, that part of ourselves, that we can tap into that and feel that with a courage, because it in itself has the courage. It in itself just has to allow all these other things that kind of cloud it in our head, in the intellect and the egoic mind, to just be still enough to allow it to come through, kind of like a ray of light that bursts through that cloudy day, like that.
What are practices or rituals that you have to be able to still those thoughts, that egoic mind?
In my life, I've been blessed to study lots of different spiritual paths and have lots of different practices. So I wouldn't say that any one in particular is the way, because that's evolving too over the course of time. There were times when I practiced meditation a certain way. It's not the same way that I practice meditation now. I always have moments of stillness, but I feel more than what I used to think as the ritual of, having a certain time and a certain time of day, and it kind of had to be a certain way, and I had to do a certain lighting of the candle and do it. Now it's more flowing, it's more fluid. It's like I find myself throughout the course of the day having moments of pausing and stillness and sinking into that pocket that I mentioned, where it just feels like right in there. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's where I feel it. That's the same place that if I'm laying down and I'm totally in that just meditative state, I feel almost like I'm buzzing, and it's a little bit like I'm lifted, not quite on whatever place I'm seated or laying on, and feel that floaty, but feel that like totalness of who I am also flowing through all my body. But I find that in all the pockets of the day, it could be on a busy train going, into the loop or something. It could be in a moment where I'm in a crowd of people, as well as it's in a moment of sitting in the sunshine, as it's coming through my window and sitting in a classic, lotus pose. It could be doing yoga, it could be exercising, but then sometimes it could be like lifting the weights and feeling the, the oomph of, that pulling up on a weight and feeling the muscles stretch. It could be eating a piece of delicious food that I so in love to, I love to dine. So to me, it's like a really soulful experience to do that. It's just in the prayer, it's in the hug of a friend, of, hearing my granddaughter on the other end of the line, or talking to, one of my children about something going on in their life. So it's in so many forms, but it's that pause. And I feel like it's more and more just the pockets. And so the more that awareness comes into me, I feel like that's my greatest practice at this moment right now. Apart from writing and, starting to doodle and write, like from your retreat that I had the privilege of joining not too long ago. But it just comes in so many different ways on walks. I love to walk and be still and really kind of hold that awareness around me. And, I've come from a background of being off the grid and living in this very natural way, to now being much more attracted to this urban kind of feel and energy. And I'm feeling the same things that I felt. I think we had this conversation once before, like on top of a mountain, as I do, like right in the center hub of the high rises. It's just this feeling of like I'm this little point of light in this great big matrix of lights, and I'm just so thankful about that, and feeling that connectedness, I think, is the greatest practice.
Yeah. Well, I first of all, I love the thought of like the pocket, like finding a pocket of stillness, and just practicing that throughout your day. Where could I have a pocket of stillness here, and just kind of sink into it. And that just practicing that, I think that's very empowering. It's a very easy place for people to start. And everything can grow in your own natural, organic way from there. You can find your own pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what comes through, what speaks through in those pockets is what I think is the inspiration that guides us and gives us those things like the courage and the strength and the, like the next step of what to come when we're creating, and that's what's so beautiful too, because and in that pocket, when you are creating like that, there's always a sense of like thrill. It's almost like a little electrifying, it gives you a buzz kind of feel, because there's a deep like love and joy in it. And so that's what I shoot for.
Yeah, like a connection to your joy. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I just wanted to mention about that is that, in all of our stories, we have these experiences that, sometimes we face suffering, and that suffering serves to push us, force us into finding the pocket, because that's the only way we feel relief from the pain. And by doing that, it serves a purpose until we begin to discover how we can access that pocket, how we can enter into that place, and the suffering subsides. And we begin to recognize a creative power that exists in us. And from there, we can really create, and we can transform and rewrite our stories any way we want. And that's when it gets super exciting, super exciting, because it's really like, I'm sure, everybody recalls a time as a kid when they were told you can be whatever you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth.
Mm-hmm. I feel like what you just described was one of the themes in Girls Seeking Pearls, that, it wasn't, the whole book didn't have this feeling of everything being lovely all the time. And there was joy, but there was also, it was very real. The suffering was as much a part of life as the joy. And then the wisdom that was found through both of those experiences. And to me, that was one of the things that made it ring as true, because it had both. It had both of it, and there was wisdom and understanding that came from the two of those things really coming together and being woven together.
Yeah, and I think that's how life is, So it's interesting in that process of writing the story to be able to also understand things that on my own spiritual path, of a desire to expand consciousness. It challenged belief systems within things that I practiced at one time or that I followed at one time. And so it's always, just being open to receiving what is ringing true in this moment. And it keeps evolving and it keeps expanding. And then there's certain things that sink true. And those are what I refer to as the pearls. And they're the string, And then, as I had mentioned in the story, because it really came like that, it was a whole lot of life that I was like looking for those pearls. Where were they? Where are they? Oh, that's one, and kind of collecting them. But at the end, it's really like, wait, here's my pocket. I'm sitting in it. Now the pearls are just coming.
Yes, I love that part. Yes.
And that's where it's at right now, and that's kind of the springboard to these next things that I'm working on.
Yeah, I love that. So that's a really good segue. I'd love to hear what's next for you, what you're thinking about with this book or other projects.
Yeah. So I would say that Girls Seeking Pearls is a piece of a bigger picture. And I would say that it was the first opportunity that I had to write in this way. Having been in Waldorf education and teaching for many years, I was always creating curriculum, writing and drawing and doing all those kinds of things, working in movement and lots of the different arts. Mm-hmm. But Girls Seeking Pearls was like a sit down, write in this format, not, and a whole story. So that was a piece. And I see other books coming along, like I have an idea for one right now called Golden Rings. It's been ringing true for me, and I see it as 12 different stories that are going to be inspiring stories, similar to your inspiring story here. Yeah, but I'll know when I find those different stories, so I'm calling those people that have been inspiring others and wanting to hear their story, like you. And yeah, and so that's a piece. But the bigger part was, I think, Girls Seeking Pearls, when it came, it needed to land somewhere, and out of that came the idea of Pure Esperanza. And that leads back actually to a vision from when I was 18 and the idea of having an educational center. So I think part of this journey that I've been on in all the different ways that I've reinvented myself and pieces of my own story, I was always teaching. That's kind of the path that I was put on, but in many different forms. And I was always kind of like, oh, is this it? Is this where I'm supposed to be? And then, it was shifting and moving in different ways. And just like the vision of the center, it was always like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe this group of people is going to create that. And it was kind of sitting in the back of my head, and then it would, move to another piece of life until this moment now. And Pure Esperanza was like the foundation, the intention and the foundation. Out of that, having to, on a practical level, catch up with like this technological age that we're living in, and form things like create forms like social media platforms and things of that nature, but really moving into all the kind of lay work that was needed for Pure Esperanza, a center. And I see this center as a place, and I still speak about it in that way that's kind of like images and pieces coming to me because it's not fully formed yet. But what I see is that there are many different centers that will come. Pure Esperanza, I don't think, is the only one. I think they're being created now, and I think they're coming for humanity as we become more aware and consciousness continues to expand. And so I see Pure Esperanza as a center that will bring educators, artists of all the different forms, and healers to a space, a physical space, that they can share gifts, including myself, and being able to teach in that way and impart wisdom, but in many different forms, and in forms that we won't be able to put it in a box like, oh, that's what a traditional yoga center looks like, or that's what a traditional wellness center looks like, or this is what a retreat center looks like. I want it to be fluid also, and to have the faces of many, just like, the pieces of all our stories, and what that looks like doesn't have a specific way, So I want it to be able to touch where everybody can feel like, oh, that's different, yet, oh, wow, I'm finding my sameness in that difference, and we can have that full range and spectrum of ages. Breaking through barriers that might be socioeconomic classes, races, belief systems, just really cutting into all the different forms until we strip away forms and find the pocket.
Yeah, the pearls.
Yeah.
Yeah. So almost like you're going to be offering pearls, it feels like to me. Yeah. Through all these different people. You don't even know what the pearls are yet because
No.
it depends on who shows up and what beautiful things happen when they do, right?
and that's it's the most wonderful, crazy thing, because there was so much of life that I spent, planning it out, and, there was a lot of things that were like, just the planning, and that was a lot of head and thing going on, and it took a while through that process in Girl Seeking Pearls to be able to become comfortable with not knowing, comfortable with the unknown, and that pocket, getting into that pocket allows me to feel trust. Like I was just having this conversation with my husband the other day, and I'm like, it's a different thing when you practice a lot of different spiritual beliefs or anything, and it like in your head. And then you kind of get more of a feeling in your gut, and then it becomes more integrated in your whole being. So then there's no like if and or. It's just a matter of like when, now, it's coming.
I love that.
Yeah.
Complete trust. It's great.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would love to share about Girl Seeking Pearls? Something you would love somebody to ask you about, or?
I am always so honored when someone in that moment, whatever it is that comes to them, just comes from their heart. And whatever that question is, I'm open and I'm here, and I will happily just talk with you and listen to what the question is, because I think that's really it. We all have these different questions that we're sort of asking in a way, and it's just finding at some point the strength and the empowerment in ourselves to know, like, oh, it's in me. So if I hear it out here somewhere, it's because it already lives in me. And then it's just connecting it.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's great. So as we wrap up, any last words of wisdom for people on their own creative journeys, who want to write their own stories in their own ways?
Follow the path of heart. So I would just say, it's been written about, it's been, expressed in so many ways, but that I feel is a resounding truth that everyone in some moment of their own being has experienced, the path of heart. It is the one that when we develop that relationship, we can be guided to a deeper place within us that will lead us to great things. And I say that, great things, because we are that greatness. That light in us is the greatness that came here, that was born here with that place in the world of worlds and universes creating out there. So trust that. And it takes time. It takes time to learn how to trust. And I say that because I didn't even know how much I didn't trust. Right?
Yeah.
And I didn't even know how much I feared, until I began to really get into that pocket and listen to the thoughts. Be the observer, be the listener, and then just trust and let yourself be guided by that. You will have the wisdom. I believe in you, and that wisdom.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm sinking into the pockets of your words as you speak. They're beautiful. And for everybody who's listening or watching, if you love how beautiful the words have been in this podcast, you're going to love how beautiful the words are in the book. So please check it out. It's Girl Seeking Pearls, and you can find it at pureesperanza.com. Thanks so much. See you again soon.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank
Bless
you.